everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from in the world. And during this busy season, we appreciate you taking that time to spend it with us here today for the first of its kind, the .NET Conf and Visual Studio 2022 launch after party event, where we go and talk with experts and ask the questions that you submitted live here at this event. So I'm incredibly excited to be hosting this event for you all. My name is Jamie Singleton. I'm a senior program manager on the .NET community team. And today I'm joined here with some of my favorite friends from the PM and engineering groups and cloud advocates to talk about everything .NET 6 and VS 2022 launch related. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring on all of my friends. Yay, party.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
The gang's all here.
Exciting. Thank you all for joining me as well. Also, again, close to the end of the year, so I know you're all really busy trying to wrap everything up. So thanks for being here. Everybody online really appreciates it as well. How about we introduce ourselves? I would love to know more about each of you. I mean, I know all of you, but everyone would love to know more about each of you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Emergencies. Tell us what team you're on, a little bit about your background, what you're really excited about the recent releases. Yeah, just fill us in on you. Let's start with Maddie.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you for joining. And thanks for that wonderful intro, Jamie. I am Maddie Montequilla, formerly Maddie Legere. I just got married. That's why my name changed. I didn't do it for fun. Thank you. And yeah, I am a PM on the .NET Maui team, which is also the Xamarin team. We're kind of doing double duty right now. My focus has been really developer productivity for the past couple of years. So I've been on the team for like 3.5, 4 years. I was actually an intern at Microsoft when Xamarin got acquired. That's my favorite fun fact. And my manager at the time was like, oh, they seem cool. And I was like, no. And here we are many years later. But yeah, I love working on .NET Maui. It's been great getting to be a better, bigger part of the .NET ecosystem. So I get to work with all of these people on this side of me even more.
Yay. Well, thanks for joining us here, Maddie. Mads, how about you? You're next in my list.
Sure. Yeah, hi, I'm Mads, and I'm also a program manager. I'm the lead designer of C# nowadays. So I work closely with pretty much all the teams. I don't have a real team myself, but we have a language design team of people from other teams that join me to figure out what's next in C#. I think I'm the only one who probably gets paid to design C# full time. So I feel pretty privileged to be here.
We all think of ourselves as on Team Mads, though. Like,
for sure.
Go Team Mads.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, Mads. I'm just going to go down the list here. Daniel Roth.
Oh, that's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Roth. I'm a program manager on the ASP.NET team. So I work on our web frameworks and UI stacks. Something you might not know about me, I love Lego robots. I work with a Lego robot team. We just finished our season, and our team actually won our Lego robot competition this year, which was really great. Go Banana Bots! Great job. Yeah, super excited to be here today.
Yay! Whoa, Banana Bots. That's a great name.
They came up with it.
I love that. I'll have to ask you about that more, Dan. Kendra.
Hi, I'm Kendra. I'm a program manager on the .NET and Visual Studio team, and I do a lot on testing and sometimes things on productivity with Mika Dumont as well. Fun thing about me, for a while during the Panini, I worked on a car restoration in my living room, which was really fun. We were repainting and sanding doors down and stuff of a FJ Cruiser.
In your living room?
How do you get a car into your living room?
In parts. One piece at a time, Dan.
How are you gonna get it out again? Through the window.
We managed.
Through the roof.
That's amazing. Oh, you're like our mechanical engineer.
We need pictures.
Yes, please send pictures.
I can send those.
Jeff Fritz.
Hey there, friends. My name is Jeff Fritz. I'm a program manager on the .NET community team, and I specialize in helping present events like this with Jamie and Kendra and some of the other folks here, you'll see me creating a bunch of content for Microsoft Learn modules, live streaming out there, and creating samples for you to check out, so you can learn more about Blazor and .NET Maui and some of the other cool tech that we've released as part of .NET 6. A fun fact that some folks haven't heard about me. I don't know. This is going around a little bit at least, but I have a couple horses that we keep here for the Fritz family, including one a thoroughbred that's a little ornery that we like to manage, and my daughter rides in competition. So.
Oh yeah, I love seeing your posts about your horses. They're so cute. Yeah, Jeff and I are on the same community team together.
Yep.
Next we have Vincent.
Hey everyone, my name is Vincent Bai. I'm a bit of the odd one out here because I don't actually work in engineering, but I'm a senior cloud solution architect, working for the US Midwest region, based in the Netherlands, and I help European subsidiaries of our European US customers to be even more successful in Azure in the area of digital and app innovation. I'm also an avid Blazor developer, and that led to me becoming part of the Fast Blazor team and bringing out that library. And a fun fact of me is that I built some open source packages for a CMS system with almost 400,000 downloads. So that was pretty successful.
Wow, that's amazing, Vincent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you here on our panel. Next, we have Luis.
Hey, friends. I am Luis. I'm a content developer working on ML.NET, Azure ML, and .NET for Spark. So I work on the docs side of things. So anything related to docs and machine learning, big data. So I'm your person there. I'm super excited to be here talking to you folks about ML.NET. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer any of those. And I'm originally from the New York, New Jersey area, but today I'm actually coming to you from the Shenandoah Valley area. So lots of mountains, lots of farms. So super complete contrast from the New York City area. So happy to be here.
Oh, amazing. I bet you're loving all that greenery.
Yep.
A little bit different than us here in the cement jungle of New York City. And last but not least, we have the amazing Scott Hanselman. Yay!
Amazing.
Maybe no introduction needed.
You're paid to say that. That's very kind. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman, and I work on the .NET and Visual Studio community team. I am on vacation right now, and I am spending my vacation messing with things like Meadow, which is a C# on a microcontroller device, which is super fun, trying to see how many places I can get C# to run. And my kids are in school right now, so I'm just hanging out and writing code for fun, which is nice. So I worked on the Azure Friday website yesterday. And a fun fact about me, for the last 7 years, I have been managed entirely 24/7 by an open source artificial pancreas, because I'm a type 1 diabetic, and it is managed in the cloud.
Amazing. Amazing. Did you have any contributions to that, Scott?
I have been a community member for the diabetes community for many, many, many years, and I've had some contributions that were organizational. So I helped organize some of the things, but I didn't actually write the code for the Swift version of that. That was written by a gentleman named Nate.
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking your holiday to spend it with us here today. I know I really appreciate it. So thank you all for being here. Oh, we have one more.
No, I'm just pointing like the Brady Bunch because that's what people do.
We are the Brady Bunch right now. Look how many people are. Yes, and then so we have everybody here. We also have a few folks representing C++ in the chat. And just because we took questions before doesn't mean that you cannot submit your questions now. Please feel free to do that throughout the event. Should you have any that pop up, we'll try to get to those at the end once we get through the pre-recorded questions. So, all right, let's take it away. Let's see. So I want to go ahead and get my proper screen over here. Oh, lovely. It closed. That's just great. I'm so sorry. 1 second.
What did you have for breakfast? Daniel.
No breakfast. It's too early.
I know it's very early for my West Coast friends. I appreciate you taking
But
it.
like, it's so worth seeing everyone. That's like coffee enough. It's that shot of, oh my gosh, people and such cool people.
This is my
Maybe
breakfast.
the breakfast is the friends we had along the way.
Cheers, Maddie.
Scott, was that a penguin? That thing you were building? Is that a penguin? Like it had like flaps?
This is the new logo. No one has ever seen this before for the WSL, for the Windows subsystem for Linux. So this is running on a Meadow device from Wilderness Labs with a screen from Adafruit. And that's the new Windows subsystem for Linux, non-tuxy tux.
Aww.
Looks like his flippers on the side, like his wings, I guess.
Yeah.
I know, like a little penguin.
You know how tux is like iconic? It's like the Linux penguin. So this is our own little kind of like, what is it? It's Windows Blue.
Fun fact, I learned fairly recently that the guy who drew Tux for the first time works at Microsoft. Like he's on the .NET team. Larry Ewing.
Yeah, Larry Ewing wrote Tux, I think almost 20 years ago now, like designed him. But if you ever ask Larry Ewing about it, he's very shy. He's like, yeah, I do.
It's famous.
Larry drew Tux in 1996.
96?
So think to yourself, what was I doing in 1996? Was I negative 4 years old?
I was starting in IT professionally.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah? You started in 96? I was writing blood sugar management systems on the Palm Pilot for diabetics, on a black and white Palm Pilot.
I was starting first grade.
I started. I encoded tubular bells on my little play computer. It's like 1996.
I hear everything was black and white back then, Scott. Like it was just like I've seen the movies. Like it was
actually, when black and white photographs, they're actually color photographs of black and white stuff. And then when the whole world turned color, none of the photographs turned color because they were color photos of black and white things. That's true.
Oh, 96. I was going with 86. Yeah, 96. Oh.
All right.
Sorry, Jamie, this whole thing's gone off the rails.
Okay, so before we get started on the questions, I just kind of wanted to, we just had two major releases. They have been in the works for a year at least. And I know all of you had tons of contributions on that. So I'd really like to know a little bit more about what was your favorite feature or something that you worked on that you're really proud of, or something that you're kind of excited to see come up in the near future with where we're going with these tech launches. So again, I'm kind of going to call people out how I see them, but I'm going to start with Maddie because she's right here next to me. So what's your favorite feature of .NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022?
Oh my goodness. When you told us you were going to ask us this question, I was so stressed out because I could go on for 45 minutes about this. And since I'm going first, it's not like everyone else has taken all of mine, so I can just take them from everybody else. No, I'll try and be good. I have to obviously say .NET Maui Preview 10 shipped with .NET 6. And so we're going GA in Q2 2022. It's still in preview. Preview 11, actually, the bits came out the other day, so that's exciting.
Hashtag preview.
It's all preview, all the preview bits, but it's really awesome. And I remember thinking after .NET Conf, it's really come together in the past few months. Just the single project experience in particular. I mean, I can put SVGs in my project now and they just automatically resize to all the different devices and everything that people use. And it's just so much easier than having to make 8,000 different sizes of images and drag them into all the right folders, which I always name wrong. And then it's a whole mess. So it's way better with Maui. And VS 2022 is also amazing. I've been using it all the time. Little thing that I'm really excited about. I don't know if anyone here worked on it, but you can change the color of the tabs based on the file extension now, which is amazing because the amount of times I click a XAML.cs file thinking it's a XAML file and vice versa. And then I'm like, ugh, but now they're different colors.
What?
Yeah, no, it's great. Right click options on the tab.
Okay.
And then there should be colorized tabs based on project or file type. It's
Right
so
click,
good.
Set tab layout options.
Yeah.
You can choose your own colors.
So
I think that's great, Taylor.
Share my screen, Jamie and Lamont.
See the colors. Let's see the colors.
The powers that be share
They're
Scott.
so pretty. Like, it was cool just to have colors in the first place, colored by project, but the fact that you can set your own colors now.
Somebody
Chef's
pull
kiss.
pull that in for a second here. Lamont, can you?
There we go.
What are those?
Oh, it's so good.
I didn't even know that was
so
a thing.
excited when I saw that. It's like the littlest. You'd think it's like the littlest thing, but it's
such a difference.
That's so. I'm like losing my mind here.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, yeah, there it is.
Wait, so question here. Does this work with custom file extensions? Let's say I made up my own. Could I choose a color for a custom extension?
Apparently, you can have pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice C#, my favorite.
Thanks, Maddie.
Okay, yeah, that's it. I won't derail this any further. Sorry.
No, this is
Sorry,
amazing.
I'm just, like losing my mind.
This
here.
for
This really goes nicely with my Beyonce themed theming engine here. They added themes to Visual Studio 2022, so now you can have VS Code themes running in VS. So I'm very excited about my layout here.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have those colored tabs track with my theme for Visual Studio. So when I bring in like the Darkula theme, have appropriate colors that vibe with that.
That'd be cool. Have it like.
I love that you're pushing the boundaries. I'm glad we just have Darkula. That's really cool. Like converting the whole, VS Code themes into Visual Studio and back. It's so cool that we have an automated tool to do that.
Friends, in YouTube, our friend Alvin Ashcraft points out colorized tabs is even cooler, Scott, if you put the tabs docked to the side.
That is a controversial conversation, and I'm not willing to have right now. And derail. The left tab people. I just
Do you want to fight,
right
Scott?
tab
Because I will die for left tabs. Those are the way to go. I will fight you right now.
Bring out the mud.
What are you
I
doing?
supported my project.
What
So much
what is happening here?
Drop the
I have this
cage.
wide monitor that I don't need. So
Look at all this wasted space here. What is this area for?
More
Well,
time.
you have an extra wide monitor, so it's either on the left over there or like on the right amongst all of your code. That's like never that long because you use line wrap. Because
All right, I will promise to try that for a day, and I'll let you know how I feel.
Yeah, see if it helps.
And open more tabs.
Well, Scott, since we already have your screen shared, and you were mentioning some features in VS 2022, what are your favorite features from the recent releases in .NET 6 and VS 2022?
So I really like this this theme thing that we talked about briefly. Grace worked on this, and this is really cool because this is a tool to take Visual Studio Code themes and move them over. So you can have like Visual Studio can look like your favorite Visual Studio Code theme more than ever, like really dramatic themes that you don't ordinarily see. I don't think people are used to seeing really cool themes like this. And there's a really great theme called Beyonce that was done by Mina Markham. And so I worked with her to add Visual Studio Code and Windows Terminal to Beyonce themed stuff. And then we converted it to Visual Studio proper. So I really like themes. The other thing that I'm still learning about, but I haven't quite figured it out yet, see now the tabs are on the left, is, I can't do this, I'm sorry.
Embrace the tabs, Scott.
I've already given up. That's how long I lasted. It's not going to happen. I haven't been able to figure out how and why. Maybe somebody on the call can explain. Like, you'll be doing a thing, and then Visual Studio will just do that. And they'll just kind of like write the code for you. And sometimes it'll be like, wow, that's a lot of code you just wrote for me. Like the IntelliCode suggestions are sometimes a lot. Like it just felt like someone did my job for me. So
it just knows.
How does it know?
It just knows.
It just knows, right? So like writing this horrible code that we're looking at right here, because I'm messing around with a bunch of JSON. Just typing, and then it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing a thing, dictionary, whatever, and then you go, oh, okay, tab, like, yeah, that's what I wanted, and then you go and do a thing, and then it's like, what? And it just fits in very nicely because you can see that I've got my my regular IntelliSense here, and then suddenly it's like, here's the next 20 line, 20 characters you probably just don't even need to worry about. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, and it fits in very nicely. You just go tab, tab, and then you keep typing. Crazy. I love it.
It does look really nice.
Yeah. It's very
That's AI in your editor.
intuitive. AI.
AI in your
Yeah, look.
editor.
Yeah, see?
All of IntelliCode is trained on models and on open source C# code and everything, and it learns from the context of where you're at, and will use local variables and local stuff that you got going on and plug into common patterns that it thinks you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's super high tech.
And
Very
what's
smart.
funny about it is like Kendra just said, it uses local variables and it figures, well, you just did that. You probably want to do that. And it's right, 80, 90% of the time. And I used to think I was like a little threatened by it. I was like, oh no, like this is not a thing. They're gonna take my jobs. And then I'm like, no, actually it's just saving me typing. It's just doing stuff that I was totally gonna do anyway. This is really awful. We need to get my crappy code off the screen here because now it's embarrassing me because Mads is here and he's like, this could have been a record or whatever. I did use a record.
No, keep it there. Keep it there for me.
There you go. That's Mads. That's Mads.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, actually, I just realized, if you don't mind, while I've got the designer here, Mads, what does this mean here?
What does that mean? Equals default?
Yeah.
It means the same as default of string, but it just grabs the type from the context, so you don't have to say it. So it's null.
But why isn't default? And why do I have to say it? It's the default.
In this case, people put it there so that they could put the bang on it because they want to silence some nullability warnings. That's my guess.
I remember when I learned about factorial in school, and the teacher was like, hey, this is the number 5. And then what's this? And then it goes like that. And I said, it's 5.
Yeah.
It's like 5 factorial. So whenever I read this, it's just like public string, first name, default.
We have, this is to get around, compiler complaining a little bit that you have things that are non-nullable, but they're initialized to null value. In C#11, we plan to have a little thing to help you not have to say that, to sort of quieten it up. You can say that these things are required to be initialized, and then that'll go away. But that's not out yet. That'll be next year.
Hey, Scott, before you go any further, we should really make this a C#10 record by changing that on line 78 to a public record class episode. So you're clear that this is a reference type, right, Mads?
Yeah, I did. You do you. Class is implied, but you could do record struct instead if you prefer it to be a struct. Or you can say it's a record class if you don't want to imply it.
Well, I don't know what any of that means. So I'm going to let Jamie have that control, and then we can have Mads explain public records during his section. Sorry. Anyway, I just like everything about it. That's my answer, Jamie, because I like it all.
Every single thing. No, I do understand. Everything is really exciting. It's hard to pick just one. But Mads, I'll go straight to you next.
Oh, yeah. So obviously, I'll pick something from C#. I think that I love all my features equally, but one thing that really sort of warmed my heart this time, given we are coming up on the holiday season and everything, is we had a very close collaboration with several teams, but especially the ASP.NET team, where we're sort of driving this philosophy of minimal APIs, trying to get all the complicated stuff out of people's faces, both so that it's not there to distract you when you look at code, but also so that the whole thing is easier to learn to begin with. And so we did a couple of things on the language side for that, including letting you take usings out of every file and put them in one place or have them be there automatically so people don't have to worry about it. So that kind of shrinks your code in that direction, but also allowing namespaces, things not to be nested in namespaces. So if you like your tabs on the left side, you get a little more screen real estate for your code because your class declarations won't be indented. So little things like that, but also types and lambdas helps with the minimal thing and so on. So it's not the individual features I love so much as the fact that we have a really good collaboration about the end experiences of using the language on real things, as opposed to sort of just adding features in the blind. So with collaboration with teams, of course, we've had really strong collaboration from the community as well this time around. C# design is open source. We get lots of feedback, lots of contributions into the compiler and so on. So that's what I've enjoyed, and it's great because I can continue to enjoy that for the next several releases as well.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a really big fan of all of the C# 10 features as well. It'd be hard to pick just one.
Me too. And I'm glad that you called out that makes it better for vertical tabs, because it is.
Right?
It is.
Just following up on that. Okay, next, Kendra.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
what are your favorite features?
With me, it's going to be test features because I'm all about that testing life. So one of the really useful ones is for a test, if you right click inside of it, you can just show in Test Explorer. I wish we had this for years, but just things keeping your test in your editor that you're actually coding in sync with the Test Explorer, so you can just right click and jump right to the results, and any like messages and info and running and debugging, all of that is like right at your fingertips is so much nicer. I know people have been like looking and thinking, okay, this is my test, let me find that name, or copying it into search and all of that stuff. Like, no, it should have just been a gesture, and we have it now. And it's a keyboard shortcut, Control-ES, when your cursor is inside of a test in the editor.
Nice, amazing. Yeah, I bet that really streamlines testing and the time it takes to get all of that done.
Yeah, I've definitely had people reacting like, oh my gosh. So it's good to know. Sometimes it's just the small things that you need, you know?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go with Dan Roth.
I gotta go with Hot Reload. Hot Reload, epic feature, VS and .NET. You change your code, like you just hit the button, little flame button, or you save if you turn that option on, and poof, it just like shows up in your app almost instantaneously. It's pretty phenomenal. It works with Blazor, it works with ASP.NET Core, it works with Maui, it works with all the UI stacks, pretty much anything in .NET. You basically get your code like injected into your app at runtime, no rebuild, no restart. That's why it's so fast. And the really cool thing is you preserve any app state. Like if you're in the middle of something really like deep in a UI someplace, like a tree view or a big complicated form, you can tweak the UI without having to recreate all that app state. So Hot Reload, huge win. Tons of other great Blazor stuff as well, of course, but Hot Reload's pretty awesome.
I wish I could be like reacting to this, like send hearts and claps. Oh my gosh, so true. I should have said Hot Reload in Test Explorer. That's so cool.
I've been a big fan of using Hot Reload with like Azure Functions apps. So as you're building something that doesn't have a user interface, as I'm changing the way that the functions behave, it just automatically patches, and now I get that new behavior as I'm building and testing those functions. Really cool stuff.
Very cool. Would you say that's your favorite feature, Jeff?
It's up there, yeah, absolutely.
What other ones would you suggest?
Oh my gosh, the improved capabilities in Blazor to interact more with the entire web document. The fact that I can change the page title, that I can inject items into the meta, I can inject meta tags into the head of my document, right? Yeah, it's so meta. That's right, meta. I can put
So
things
meta.
in there, descriptions and keywords and things in there as folks navigate around the application, makes it feel much more like a complete web application framework instead of just like a series of directives that appeared inside the DOM between a couple body tags. Now I've got full control over my page.
Nice. Love that. Have a couple more. So Vincent, I'll go to you, and then we'll finish up with Luis, and then we'll move on to questions.
Yeah, so I'm a little biased here, baby, and it's not specifically a .NET or a Visual Studio feature, but I think it must be the fact that we now have a Blazor component library from Microsoft itself that allows you to style your web app just as if it's a Windows 11 kind of app with all those controls that you like and love, and have that modern look and feel to it.
Yeah, Fluent UI support. Yeah, the Fluent UI folks built those for us. It was great. So if you haven't checked out the Fluent UI components, I think it's aka.ms/. /Blazor-Fluent-UI. Blazor Fluent UI. So that's the URL. But there's like a whole 40 of them, right? Like 40 controls.
Correct. Yes.
Fully accessible, dark mode, light mode. They can integrate with Teams apps, Windows 11, Office apps. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have some great new additions coming up, new controls, but also more capabilities of being able to style your controls with what they call design tokens, which is kind of a web standard. And we'll have support for that as well.
Excellent. All right. So what was that? aka.ms/blazor/something UI?
Blazor dash. So Blazor dash Fluent dash UI. Blazor Fluent UI. That's the URL.
Got it. All right.
We'll get the link out. Yeah.
We'll get it out there. And Luis, what is your favorite feature from the recent releases?
I would have to say everything. And the reason for that is that ML.NET runs anywhere that .NET runs. So that means that any improvements that .NET makes, whether that's Maui, Blazor, even running on IoT devices, right, with ARM architecture, ML.NET can take advantage of that, which is actually one of the features that I think really, from a machine learning .NET standpoint, improvements for running on ARM devices is a big one, because that means now that ML.NET could run on mobile devices with Maui. So I think that that's a really cool one. I also like a lot of the work that was done in F# at a language level. There was a lot of really interesting things that happened there, like task support, right? So native task support, as well as inline lambdas. I think Fuel went ahead and mentioned that inline. I think it's inline lambda, which makes it faster, your code faster. And I think, there's one more, which is actually preview. It's not, but it came around, sort of the VS launch time. And that is notebooks inside of Visual Studio. So that's a extension that you can go get. And if you are familiar with .NET Interactive, .NET Notebooks, and the work that folks have been doing there, and you want to use it in Visual Studio, that's something that's, available to you, and you can try it out. So I would say those are all the features that I think, I was really excited about.
Luis, there's someone on Twitch that's very, very happy now that you just mentioned F#. It was almost like simultaneous. Like, isn't anyone going to mention F#? And then Luis is like, and I love F#. It was well done. Well done.
Yes, got to give F# love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Luis actually just did a bunch of F#, like learn modules and content and architecture books and everything. So there's tons and tons of content that Luis contributed to for F#. So
I saw another comment, Jamie, by the way, about Hot Reload, where some people are saying, I'm having trouble getting it working. If you're having any issues with Hot Reload in VS, click that send feedback button in the upper right-hand corner. As soon as it happens, let us know. There's a whole bunch of logs that get captured as part of that send feedback button experience that helps us diagnose things. One common issue that people run into is Hot Reload with debugging and Blazor WebAssembly. That wasn't supported in the first release of VS 2022. So if you're trying to do that and it's not working, that's why. But it will be enabled really soon, like days. There should be an update coming to at least the preview channel of VS 2022 where we're lighting that up. So that is coming. If it's something else, send feedback. Click the button. Send feedback.
yes, we love feedback, and we read it. We really, really do read all of it. So always please feel free to submit feedback. Well, that was amazing. We almost covered all of the features that have been released. But if you haven't had a chance to check them out yourself, we have all of that information live on our site that actually has all of the updates and feature previews. So let's keep this party going. We do have a few questions from the community that were pre-recorded. They chose to send us videos. They could send us just questions online via mobile, different devices. So we accepted a few of those, and we're going to run the first one now. And this one actually will be for Scott Hanselman. So I will ask this question to you after it plays.
I've been using Visual Studio Code for a year now, and I still find myself surprised by some of the new features that I've encountered in the past. My question is, what are some of the coolest, or perhaps your favorite feature that most VS Code users don't know about? Thank you.
So specific VS Code features that maybe people don't know about.
VS Code or VS proper? VS the senior?
Code. VS
And she
Code.
said VS Code. Yeah.
Yeah.
VS
The
Code
VS
feature.
Code. Okay.
Where to
VS Code
dive
feature.
in? I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
like
okay.
editor rulers. I wish we had them. We have an extension in Visual Studio for editor guidelines. It puts a little line in your editor so you know when your code is
share
going
my
over
screen.
80 characters. Yeah, which is so nice when you're working in repos that like really enforce that limit because it's also like it's impolite to go over the character limit on a line of code because everyone has to readjust their screens and stuff. So I love editor rulers in VS
So
Code.
Kendra, you're pointing about this right here.
Yeah, that little line. That's all you
Right.
need. I think you can change the line color too to make it show up a little
More
bit more.
apparent.
But I like guidelines.
So having
They're
guidelines is nice.
comforting.
I put them at 80. I put them over here at 80 characters, and I have another one at 120 characters, just to like know. Those are very common width. So that's a great example. I appreciate that, Kendra. One of the other ones that I really like is colorizing of brackets, matching coloring of the brackets. Let me see if I can find one. Yeah, here you go. So not only do I have a line going from bracket to bracket, but I've also got
The color matching.
color matching. Like somebody's got their microphone on muted that was muted before because I can hear clicking and like background quiet. So maybe mute. Sure, no, there we go. There it was. So that's a great example of a thing that people don't necessarily know about. I really like dev containers, Visual Studio dev containers. That's a thing that's really significant. I don't think enough people use those. Like it's so crazy powerful that people need to like really take a moment and drink that in. So like a great example was recently I was writing some non .NET code. I won't tell you what kind of code it was, but I opened it in a dev container, so I didn't have to install the environment.
You're a little crackly on our end, Scott. I'm not sure where the feedback's coming from, but it's a little hard to hear you.
Oh.
Here, I'll narrate. Scott, continue to demo. No. Whatever I say, you have to show. No, but it's really cool. Dev containers showing up in Visual Studio Code in a completely like kind of contained environment. You can kind of completely isolate your development environment from your local machine. You can deploy that container. You can actually connect to. This is essentially code spaces. So it's connecting to a container running somewhere else, not in your machine, and you can do your entire development inside of that environment. With VS Code, which is super, super cool.
And I would just add also, right, you could even run this on a Raspberry Pi, which I recently just did. I was developing on the Raspberry Pi running .NET code, but, instead of using VI or Emacs, which I'm not going to get into that, I was using a full, UI editor VS Code to do my development.
That's a great point. Am I still crunchy?
You sound great now.
Okay.
You're back.
Yeah, the Raspberry Pi example is great. Raspberry Pis are lovely little Docker container runners. People don't realize that the easiest way to get dev up running on a Raspberry Pi is actually Docker, which is not intuitive. Docker is really lightweight on a Raspberry Pi. So dev containers work great. Remote code, SSH over VS Code is really great. So yeah, those are some of my favorite things. I mean, I could kind of go on and on, but for me, it's usually about coloring. Oh, what's the other thing that John Papa uses? Peacock?
Yeah.
Is it Peacock? There's a thing called Peacock that is here it is, changes the workspace color.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you know about this, Kendra?
Pretty. No, I don't spend enough time in VS Code land.
So you all were saying you like colored tabs. Now you can go and have the entire environment, kind of wacky and crazy. So that's kind of cool. So then I like that. And then I took my command prompt and also made it match my Beyonce theme as well. So when I go here, my theme matches the same way as before. So all my colors are consistent across all of my browsers. My terminal, my VS Code, and my VS proper.
Amazing.
Yeah, that looks lovely, especially for people who have like color preferences. This would really help them for visual learners.
Scott, to your point about John Papa and the colorizing Visual Studio Code with Peacock, he uses that so he can tell the difference between which JavaScript framework he's using with different applications. So he might have a Vue application and I'll put that in green, and an Angular app and I'll put that in a red one. So we can tell just at a glance, oh, this is the framework I'm using with this application.
That's cool.
Wow.
Very cool. Amazing. Well, thank you, Scott and Kendra and Luis and everyone who contributed. Yeah, feel free, if you know answers to some of these questions or you have things to add, please feel free to do so. Okay, so for the next question, we don't have a video, but Jonathan Lennon asks, I am interested in learning more about collaborative applications, specifically GitHub. What are some new technologies available in GitHub where I can collaborate on code more efficiently? And I have this one for Jeff, actually.
Jeff's furiously responding in chat.
I'm typing YouTube, reply to somebody here on YouTube. So I'm sorry, the question again was about, can you repeat that? I'm sorry. I was too busy talking to other folks.
That's why we're trying to avoid dead air, Fritz.
Sorry. New technologies available in GitHub to collaborate on code. Oh my gosh. You got to check out Code Spaces. And it's so easy to get in and start editing code and sharing code easily on GitHub. Either go all the way into Code Spaces where it'll start up a container and run a Visual Studio Code instance in your browser that you can edit. You'll have a you'll have a .NET runner there or other runners appropriate for whatever technology your project is built in. And when you're in a code space, you can then light up Visual Studio Live Share in there and share code from GitHub out to somebody else, a teammate, a colleague that you want to collaborate with and get them into that same Visual Studio Code instance. So that's really cool way to get folks involved and really make development that team sport that we all know it is. You need your friends over here helping you out, building all the cool things. So that's one part of that. You can also open a Visual Studio Code and instance in the browser and edit content directly. When you're in GitHub, you can, when you browse to a file, you have it open, you're looking at your program CS file, you can just hit the period key on your keyboard and it will immediately open Visual Studio Code and load your project into it, particularly opening that file you were working on. You can make some changes there, save it, push it back into GitHub, and you don't have to deal with that clumsy little text editor that opens that looks like a text area on a web page. So these easy ways to light up our favorite text editor, Visual Studio Code, with GitHub without having to do an install and take advantage of some of the container technologies that we can share is a really great way for us to not just share content, but share our configuration and get other folks into our code without having to push virtual machines around and configurations and install things locally. I can contribute and collaborate with somebody from my tablet device. That's awesome power that I can now enable other folks in a workshop, in an educational setting, or even if I'm just hanging out and I want to go hang out outside at a city park, I can open up my tablet and work right there. Really cool stuff. Somebody muted Jamie.
I was trying to mute everybody, and instead I just muted myself. Oh, hooray. Well, yes, Code Spaces is amazing. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing light onto that. Appreciate that. Okay, so next we do have a video, and we'll cue that up. And this question will be, I have it scheduled for Kendra.
All right, let's do it.
Let's roll that tape, Lamont.
Hello, my name is Ratu Bonvolea, and my question for you is, what is the best way to do pair programming using Visual Studio 2022 in the context of working from home? Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad I got this one. Yeah, it was actually very related to what Jeff was just saying about live share and VS Code and all of this code collaboration that we've been talking about. So I would highly, highly recommend live share for pair programming. It's even better, even if you're in the same office, it's still a great experience because you don't have to look over somebody's shoulder. So they can share a live share link with you. When you click on it, you can open it in whatever IDE is on your local machine, so either VS Code or Visual Studio, and it actually opens basically their code. It's like a stream that's looking at all of the actual code, all of the text that's streaming to your machine, but all the builds and stuff are happening on the host machine. So it's a way for multiple people to kind of get on your machine looking exactly at your code. They can navigate differently. They can navigate to different files and then come back and hop back to where your cursor is. So it kind of gives them this full context. And when you're troubleshooting and somebody has an idea and they want to dig into something while you're kind of driving and trying to solve it a different way, and they can get all of that context and kind of share that and help troubleshoot with you, it's super, super cool. And they can even type, and so you can share in view mode or edit mode, and they can say like, "Oh, I know what like syntax you're doing," so you don't have to say, "No, your period use a caret." You don't have to actually like articulate the code. You can just kind of do it and actually code along with each other. That's really cool. I'm a huge fan of LiveShare.
Yay!
I will say that as we had to go all virtual in the C# language design meeting, we use LiveShare as our shared whiteboard, so to speak, because we always talk about code. What will this look like? What are these different versions of what some code could look like with a new feature? And so we just have a big LiveShare that every participant in the meeting is in, and we can just type things and look at what each other is doing. It's very scalable as well. Like we're often 10, 12 people in there in the same code, and everyone with their own color, by the way, Kendra, and that works.
We love it. Yes, your cursors are color coded. It's excellent. Yeah, it's great. It's great for students. It's great for full-time developers. On my team, we're using it all the time. We're using it in the C# design language meetings and everything. It's wonderful. Do we have another question queued up?
Yes. I'm struggling with my mute button over here today. There's like a hotkey, and then I'm also like doing it, clicking with manually. But yes, thank you, Kendra. That's amazing. I love the idea of pair programming, and these were some really good suggestions. We definitely have more questions. Okay. So the next question that we have, it's for Visual 2022 community, but a little bit more directed at C++. So I do have Moyo on the call who can answer to this question via audio. So we're going to have her do that. And then Mads, should you have anything that you may want to add after this, please feel free to do so. And let's go ahead and roll that clip, Lamont.
Hello, I like Visual Studio 2022 community and I'm interested about C++. Can I install Visual Studio 2022 and can I activate Visual Studio 2022 community who is Björn Stolstop and why creates C++? I'm Vladimir Izov and I'm from Petric, Bulgaria, retired airman. Thank you.
Thank you for submitting your question. I really love seeing these live questions, actually. So to clarify, the question is, I like Visual Studio 2022 community, and I'm interested about C++. Can I install Visual Studio 2022 and activate the Visual 2022 Community Edition? Additionally, who is Björn Stroustrup? I butchered his last name. And why create in C++?
Yeah, that's awesome. You can definitely use Visual Studio 2022 with C++. There's a C++ workload, and so once you click on that desktop development with C++, you get all access to all the amazing C++ features. I mean, the experience in when you're using C++ in Visual Studio is actually pretty amazing. I mean, you get all the IntelliSense, and it's, yeah, definitely recommend to do that. And we also have the C++ dev blogs that you can, if you have questions on how to do things, and we have a bunch of documentation, you can definitely check it out. We'll put that in the chat. And who is, I can also not pronounce his name, but he, is the mastermind, the genius behind C++. And it was actually created, right, as an extension of C. So it's like C with classes. And it's supposed to be a nice mixture, right, of a low-level language and still have the awesomeness of being able to like do things with classes. And that way you can have a really fast, like create products with really fast speed because you can manage memory and do a bunch of awesome low-level things like that. And so that's why people use C++. It's just super great.
Yeah, on that last bit, I can just add that, I mean, Bjarne Strostrup, as we say in Danish, is he came up through the same university as I did, though a lot earlier. and he was actually, some of the people who invented object-oriented programming were, they were from Norway, but they were at that Danish university at the time. When Bjarne was a student, and he was influenced very much by those ideas of object-oriented programming from the very inventors of it, and decided that he could create a version of C that had those abstractions, but in a way that you only pay for them if you need them, like in a sort of zero overhead kind of way. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah, he's an interesting character. There's a lot out there about like there are YouTube videos of him and so on, explaining the evolution of C++, the principles that went into it, and so on. Very interesting guy. I recommend looking into him.
Thank you for that, and also for pronouncing his name properly in Dutch. We appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick question, actually? Danish.
Danish, my apologies.
Quick question. Is that a coincidence? Like C# and C, like do Danish children like run in the streets and learn languages early on? Like,
it's a great question.
What's the deal with Danes and languages?
I don't know exactly, but it can't be an entire coincidence. There are a lot of people. I mean, Anders Husberg is there as well, and several people involved with Pascal and so on. All the way back to the 60s, we've had there's just been a strong programming language community, especially 60s, 70s, 80s, early on, and apparently it spawned a lot of good stuff.
Somebody in the chat said Danish is the most difficult language to speak, so they make other languages in order to like deal with that. I don't know what the Finns would say about that, but I think that's an interesting perspective.
There's research to that proves that Danish is the hardest Nordic language to learn. But I digress.
Cool. Well, that was cool, Jamie, that you brought Moyo in to hang out as well. So hi to Moyo if she's still in the background here.
Yes. Thank you so much, Moyo, for joining. I really appreciate it. We had a last minute finagling that we had to do to get Moyo on. So I'm really, really glad that they were able to join. Okay, so ML.net. This question is for Luis. So let's go ahead and roll that clip, and I will reread the question after.
Hi, my name is Veronica Kolesnikova. I'm Microsoft MVP in AI. First of all, I want to thank .NET Conf organizers and speakers. It was great. Thank you so much. I have a quick question for Bree and Luis from ML.NET team. I'm wondering where they were running their demo. Was it on Windows or Mac? And is it possible to run the same scenario on Linux, Mac, and Windows? And if it is possible, then I want to learn more about possible limitations. Thank you.
Oh, I like how they called you out directly.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. So I guess to give folks a little bit of context who may not have attended .NET Conf, we did a demo where we went from training a machine learning model to try to repair music. So it was a score of music and it had missing notes, and we tried to use machine learning and surrounding notes to try to infer like, hey, this note would sound good in this specific spot of the song so that we could repair it. And we trained that model, and then we deployed it to a Maui app. So this was on an Android device, with the emulator, and it was on Windows. So we ran this demo on Windows using Visual Studio and using Maui. I would assume because you could do Xamarin with Mac as well, that Maui, right? And Maddie could actually correct me because I am not a Maui expert by any means. So you could do it. So I suppose you could probably run this on a Mac as well, right? Because both ML.NET runs on Mac devices, and Maui does as well. Let's see. In terms of Linux, I don't know. Maybe you could definitely do the training part of the machine learning model on Linux. The Maui part, maybe, Maddie, maybe. Yes.
Okay. Probably. I haven't tried it, but you probably could. I can't see why you wouldn't. Someone should go write a blog about it, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that would be a fun experiment. So if you wanted to rerun it, I think the repo we made it public. It's probably under my GitHub somewhere. And yeah, so you can go ahead and take the code and run it yourself. It was a pretty involved app. So so there were a lot of moving parts. But I mean, you can run it on Linux. Sorry, you can run it on Windows because that's where we ran it. I think I got everything in that question, maybe.
Yeah, I think the only further questions were, are there any limitations?
Limitations? Not with our demo, as far as I'm aware, because of the model that we trained. Not any that I'm aware with that particular scenario.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. We'll keep moving right along here. Okay, great. We have one more video, and this one is for Dan. Go ahead and roll that one.
What's happening?
The anticipation.
Our producer Jamie is saying that there's no more videos. Are we missing one?
There is one more.
You might just have to read it out.
I may just have to read it out.
You could act it out.
That's
a dramatic reading.
Dear Dan. What? Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
No, I mean, I like how you're going about it.
Oh, I was just being silly. All right, let me get started. Okay. Dear Dan, what does the future roadmap for Blazor look like so web developers get motivated to start learning to code using C#? And that's from Oscar Garcia.
Yes. No, I love this question. This is a great question. Because it reminds me of like my first experiences trying out Blazor. Like back in 2017, we had the first early Blazor prototypes that Steve Sanderson had put together. And I knew a little JavaScript, but not very much. And I remember sitting down in front of Blazor for the first time and writing front-end web UI code in .NET and C# and being like, I can be a web developer now. This is amazing. It was so much fun. It was so enabling. And we certainly hope that Blazor enables like a whole new generation of web developers, makes web development more approachable to a whole lot of people. Blazor is actually currently one of the fastest growing parts of .NET. There are certainly a lot of .NET developers that are starting to use Blazor and loving it, whether you come from a web development background or not. You could be a desktop developer and you're like, I want to do some web dev. Well, you can use your C# and .NET skills with Blazor to build front-end web applications. It's actually really neat to see that a lot of non.NET users are coming to Blazor. We're seeing that like about 20% of the people that try out Blazor for the first time, they say this is their first time using .NET. So we are seeing people coming to web development through Blazor, and that's really exciting. As for the Blazor roadmap, like what are we looking to do? Well, we just finished delivering a whole bunch of new functionality in .NET 6. So there's tons of new features in .NET 6 for Blazor. A hot reload. There's the new WebAssembly build tools for doing AOT compilation, runtime relinking, native dependencies. You can render your Blazor components from JavaScript, error boundaries, lots of great stuff that we just finished up and shipped. So you should definitely check all those things out. Next up for us is the upcoming .NET Maui release. We're working at that same time frame. We're working on Blazor hybrid support. This is the ability to take Blazor components and host them directly in native client applications, like a native mobile app or a native desktop app, and have them run directly in the app, but then render to an embedded web view control. So this gives you a way to reuse Blazor web components in native client apps. So you get the best of both worlds. You get full access to the device. You're not limited by the what the web platform can do. If the device can do it, you can do it from your .NET code in Blazor. But at the same time, you get to reuse your web skills and code. You can use HTML, CSS, Blazor components, the same components that you would use on your website. We're shipping Blazor hybrid support for .NET Maui, of course, as well as for WPF apps and Windows Forms apps. And that's all coming in the same time frame as .NET Maui, so Q2 of next year, 2022. At the same time, we're also planning for .NET 7. .NET 7 will ship, every year we have a new .NET release, so .NET 7 will ship in November of 2022. And we have a big, long backlog of stuff that we want to do for Blazor in that time frame as well. Things that we're looking at doing there, more improved support for WebAssembly ahead of time compilation. We want to support mixed mode, where you can have part of your app ahead of time compiled and the rest of it still remain as normal .NET assembly. So you can sort of tune that trade-off between download size and runtime performance. Multi-threading is something we've had on our backlog for a long time for Blazor WebAssembly. We're hoping to get that done in the .NET 7 timeframe. It really depends on browser support. Apple's sort of the holdout there, so hopefully they'll enable the features that we need in Safari so that we can do multi-threading on WebAssembly with Blazor WebAssembly. Other things, Blazor custom elements. We have that in preview right now. This is where you can take a Blazor component and use it as a just standards-based web component or custom HTML element in a browser that allows you to use Blazor components really from any front-end web framework. It's in preview right now. We'd like to productize that for .NET 7. I'm forgetting things. Yeah, I mean, there's Blazor server. There's a bunch of stuff for like controlling the circuit lifetime of Blazor server circuits, as well as enabling you to like pause them and resume them. That was work we had hoped to get done in .NET 6, didn't quite make it, but we hope to do it in .NET 7. So lots of stuff coming. Look for the Maui release and then .NET 7 coming later next year.
Well, that's definitely motivating. Go Blazor! Go C Sharp! Yeah, lots of stuff coming.
Thank you, all those Blazor users out there. Thank you for all the feedback.
Yes. I hope that was a great answer for Oscar.
Great question asking, great delivery. Yes, exciting stuff coming for Blazor after all of the already amazing stuff that we've just announced. That actually leads perfectly into a question I have for Vincent. Why do the Blazor Fluent UI web components look different than the React Fluent UI components? Oh, you're muted.
That's a very good question. So what you get when you use these React components is actually a representation of what was known earlier as Office Fabric, and that was like what the older Office applications looked like. Whereas if you are using now the Fluent UI components from Blazor, you're actually getting the latest state of the Fluent design system. And it really looks like Windows 11 controls in your browser. And we're not aiming to match what you see and get with the React components, but we're building it to this latest version of Fluent UI that you see in Windows 11. And that's also what all the product groups within Microsoft are aligning to. So yeah, the approach we're taking is to do that implementation as web components, and that's a web standard. And as Dan already said just now, that allows you to use those components kind of from any language. So you could probably write a Blazor component and then have it run by a React application and have it look like that complete Windows 11 design system. But yeah, it's good for standardization and long story short, Fluent UI components based on the FAST framework gives you the latest Fluent UI design system and the look and feel in a Blazor component library.
Thanks, Vincent. I appreciate that answer. It flowed really nicely after. So we have a ton of questions in chat. I'm going to have a few more pre-recorded questions. So I want to keep on the schedule. And I want to make sure that we get to some of these really great questions that we've got in the chat. Thanks to our moderator, Jeff, who's been collecting those for me. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start asking a few questions from our chat. Okay, so from Jose Silva asks, why are AOT binaries bigger than JIT compilation?
JIT compiled binaries. Yeah, that's a great. So for people that don't know those terms, so AOT refers to ahead of time compilation. That's where instead of you just running your .NET assemblies as is on a .NET runtime, and then the runtime on the fly compiles that .NET intermediate language into native instructions for better performance. With ahead of time compilation, the idea is, well, let's just do that up front. Like when you build the app, if you already know what architecture you're going to be running on, we can go ahead and ahead of time AOT compile directly to the native instructions for that platform. And we support AOT for a number of scenarios for mobile applications, desktop applications, and so forth. With Blazor WebAssembly, AOT compilation can make your app run much, much faster because you're not running on just using IL interpretation. In Blazor WebAssembly apps, the runtime is just an interpreter because there's no ability to JIT, to just-in-time compile the code on the fly when running on WebAssembly in a browser, which can make things a little bit sluggish if you're doing CPU-intensive workloads with the Blazor WebAssembly app. AOT can make that much, much faster. But the downside is when you take .NET IL, like your .NET assemblies, and turn it into those WebAssembly instructions or whatever the native instruction set is for the architecture you're trying to run on, it generally takes more instructions to represent what the .NET IL kind of at a high level represents. So the size of the built artifacts get bigger. In Blazor WebAssembly, we roughly see this equates to about a 2x size increase when you ahead of time compile your Blazor WebAssembly apps. So there's this trade-off, like if you're doing a lot of CPU intensive stuff and you want better runtime performance, AOT is great, and especially if you're willing to live with that extra download size hit, which will basically slow down the load time of your app. If you don't need to do any CPU intensive stuff, then no need to AOT. You can just continue to use the existing runtime as is. And many apps that honestly the IL interpreter is just fine, and the AOT compilation isn't needed. But that's why you get that bloat. You actually can see this with even like desktop apps or server apps. If you have ever played around with the tooling for like doing cross-gen or engine, those tools that basically ahead of time compile. They take your .NET assemblies and turn them into native assemblies. If you look at the size of the native assemblies, they generally get big. Like they get bigger than the original .NET assembly. So that's why that's happening.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that, Dan. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and keep asking more questions. From Florian Stork, I apologize if I did not pronounce your last name correctly. Will we see improvements for Winforms Designer in VS 2022, especially on HDPI displays? It's annoying to get the scale to 100% message. Please avoid messages piling up. Anyone want to take that one?
Can you paste it in the chat? I didn't understand.
So will we see improvements to WinForms Designer, especially on
High
HDP?
DPI.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mary McGaw, I think her team owns that, and there's ongoing and continuous improvements on high DPI displays. There are a huge amount of improvements. Just actually, I think it was in .NET 5, they added a ton of new improvements to WinForms on high DPI displays. I don't understand the complete question there, so feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, and we can try to get you more details on high DPI. I see Kendra is nodding as well, which means that she knows about that. There's always some weird high DPI thing, but that's not WinForm specific. That's just high DPI is a hard thing to do.
It was mostly to agree with you. Yeah, we should reach out to Mary. And yes, there are definitely recent improvements in .NET 5, I think. As always, if you're not on the latest Visual Studio, there's definitely active work going on in the WinForms designers and everything. So definitely, upgrade, try out previews and everything. You might see some improvements there.
Yeah, good answer.
Excellent. Okay, so we have another question. Can I compile Maui app for Windows using AOT? Maddie.
Good question. Oh, Dan came off mute. Dan, do you have an answer for this? Because
No,
my
you
answer is...
you go for it. I don't actually know I'm not certain. I mean, what I know is that the architecture of Maui is based on .NET 6, and .NET 6 has AOT capabilities. So there are features that you could use. I don't know how much that's being looked at though currently by the .NET Maui team. So Matt, I don't know if you have more context on that. Feel free to.
That was going to be my answer exactly, and it sounded much more eloquent coming from you. So
can I?
That's a good one to tweet. That's a good one to tweet me.
Well, hang on. Let me just jump in here for a second. Dan, I understand that Blazor Maui website applications are actually rendering very much like Blazor server side does, where it's actually rendering and doing all the things kind of behind the Blazor web view. So it isn't actually hosting a WebAssembly application inside of a Maui.
Right.
So we can't really do AOT.
No, well, it's different. So we're talking like AOT is just the process of taking .NET code and turning it into native instructions.
Yeah.
In the case of a Blazor WebAssembly app, you're right that what you're doing there is turning .NET code into WebAssembly code, and that's what you would do with a Blazor WebAssembly app. In a .NET Maui application, your app is normally running natively on a device like a Windows machine, a Mac device, Android or iOS. In those cases, it still would make sense to potentially AOT ahead of time compile the Maui app for the native instruction set that you're planning to run that app on. Like if you're on a Windows machine, ahead of time compiling it to x64 for better initial load performance and those types of things. Getting to like a single executable also is interesting. You are correct though that the Blazor WebAssembly and the Maui story, they do not mix. Like you're not actually using, when you use Blazor components in a Maui app, you're not using WebAssembly. You're actually running the Blazor components in a normal .NET runtime that's running natively on the device. You're not running them in the browser on WebAssembly. They're running in .NET, like a WinForms app or a WPF application. So that's, you don't use the WebAssembly AOT tech. But for any .NET Maui app, whether you're using Blazor or not, like you might just be using native UI controls with XAML, you still might be interested in ahead of time compiling that app, just like you do today with various other .NET native client apps. And I'm sure that's something that the Maui team is looking at and thinking about. I'm just not completely up to speed on all the details on what the state of it is right now.
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely something we're looking at, but I don't know. We'll see. Good tweet. Good tweet question. And then we'll have everyone respond to it when everyone's back from their vacations. When everyone's on.
Yeah. Some good tweet content there. Give something to do. Give people something to do over the holiday. Okay, next question. So, and this may have spoke to what you had already mentioned, Dan, but what do you recommend for web application in Blazor, WebAssembly or server? And if I wanted to go with WebAssembly, then how do I prevent security issues in the DLL download client?
Oh, great question. Yeah, the server versus WebAssembly debate. My guidance on this, well, first of all, regardless of which way you initially go, don't stress about it too much because you can switch. The way you write your Blazor code doesn't really change. Your your Blazor components, the component model that you're using is the same for both Blazor WebAssembly, Blazor Server. The same Blazor components work in both models. And in fact, in .NET Maui, the same components will work in .NET Maui as well, unchanged. You can just reference the library and use them. So how do you host those components is really the question here. I generally tell people start off with Blazor Server unless you know you're going to need Blazor WebAssembly. Blazor Server is really nice. Your components they actually run server side. They don't run client side on WebAssembly. They're running on your server. And we set up a real-time connection with the browser using SignalR and WebSockets and manage the UI interactions over that connection. And there's a bunch of benefits for this. The initial load time of the app is really quick because you're downloading very little. You just have a little bit of infrastructure code that we download that sets up that connection, and away you go. Your DLLs don't leave the server. So if you have any like special IP or code in those DLLs that you don't want to just be handing out to any public client, then Blazor Server can be really nice. Your code runs really fast because it's on a server-based JIT runtime, so no worries about processing power there. You can connect to your database because you're already on the server environment. You don't need to hop through an API layer and worry about the security of that and all those types of questions. So I generally suggest try Blazor Server first. Where you might start to look at Blazor WebAssembly is with Blazor Server, you're going to be paying with your server resources to run the app. Like the UI components are running on your servers. Any compute is happening on your servers. So you have to think about the scale out of that. If you're writing a line of business app that's going to have a few hundred users, you shouldn't even think about it. Like you'll have no scale out problems whatsoever. If you're thinking about having an app that's going to handle millions of specifically concurrent users, because it's all about having all those connections simultaneously and all those resources being consumed simultaneously. If you're going to have a really big, heavily loaded app concurrently, then you might think about pushing that load down to the client. And that's where Blazor WebAssembly can really shine, because now you get to use the client's CPU, their memory, their processing power to do stuff instead of having to pay for all that with your servers. So that's generally how I think about it. Blazor WebAssembly is also really nice for deployment. Like you can deploy the app as a static site. It's really a lot like JavaScript that way. The Blazor WebAssembly part is just a bunch of static files. We even have a really nice static site hosting solution on Azure called Azure Static Web Apps, which allows you to build Blazor WebAssembly front ends that are just static sites with a serverless backend using Azure Functions. Super cool. So that's an option with Blazor WebAssembly. The app can run offline because you download the app to the client. And at that point, once it's there, as long as it has all the data it needs, it doesn't need any connection to the server to run. Blazor Server needs that connection. So that's a consideration there. So those are the things you think about with Blazor WebAssembly. But once you're running on the client, you have to then think about, well, how do I get the data down there? How do I think about security and all those things? So I would start with Blazor Server unless you need those benefits of Blazor WebAssembly. And that's generally how I direct people these days.
Excellent. Great. Yes. So, okay, I'm going to keep reading questions because we have so many. This is amazing. Okay. So this one might be for Maddie again. Can desktop applications for Ubuntu be created with Maui?
Good question. So officially, we are not having Linux backend support right now. And that's just because we're trying to ship a product and there's like a bajillion different backends we want. There's been a lot of talk internally and externally about whether Linux makes sense as a backend for Maui. And, I have my own opinions on that, but it really just depends on when we get around to building something like that. That being said, there is an existing GTK backend for Xamarin Forms, and it's a community maintained thing. And so hypothetically, that will just work with Maui too, with a little bit of tweaking probably from that project. So yeah, you can write Linux apps using GTK with Xamarin Forms, thanks to our amazing community members and their contributions. And we have no firm plans right now to bring Linux into the actual formal first-party backends, but that's just for .NET 6 because that's how far we've planned. So definitely let us know your thoughts on that. There's a very lively GitHub issue about it on the Maui GitHub.
Okay, great. So make sure to tune in, follow along on that repo for updates there for Ubuntu. Okay, next question. This is for Mads. Mads, as C# keeps evolving fast, some people worry about it becoming too complex. Do you think C# can break compatibility with older versions in the future to make it simple? For instance, dropping some keywords or changing what they're used for.
Oh, that's a really great question. It's something that is very much on our minds. I mean, the special thing about a programming language is that if you take something out, then somebody will be relying on that, and you're breaking their code that has been compiling reliably for 10 years or so. And so the answer is no, in a sort of narrow sense. We can't really take things out of C#. We don't feel like we can. Like that is not a good kind of SLA, if you will. So it's true that C# gets bigger and bigger. I mean, that's just now a given. What we try to do is to make the experience of writing C# not more complex, but simpler. So when we add new features, they're often about making something simpler that was harder before. We already mentioned a few of those features here today. That, of course, that still leaves the old ways of doing things available in the language. And we are starting to worry about that a little bit, because the language does have sometimes many ways of doing the same thing. And one of the things that we're starting to try to do is to try to steer people more to what we consider the right way of doing things, the modern, more expressive, simpler, more clear way of doing things. Like we've spent, like over the past several releases, we've been adding pattern matching, for instance, which wasn't even a thing in C# before. So a lot of logic for selecting different paths in your code, depending on the shape of things, can now be written much more elegantly with patterns than it could before, with nested if-elses and switches, and which was kind of messy, hard to follow, hard to debug. And so we try, and I think you'll see us do more of this, where both in tooling and in documentation, we sort of try to steer people towards modern C#, towards the best way of doing things out of the sometimes several that are available. I think that's so it is sort of like a very soft deprecation, if you will, that that some features are better than others. I think that's probably the right compromise, where nothing breaks. But if you are to start something today, we help you as much as possible doing it in the way that you're going to not regret, in the way that utilizes modern, more simple and approachable features. Did I hit every part of the question there?
I believe so. Yes. A quick follow-up question on that, though, that I'm seeing in the chat is, what is modern C# and what is not modern?
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to. We have to come to an agreement on that in order to be consistent. I think we have, and I think that is work in progress. We don't have like a curated spec of what is modern C#, and I think that it's always going to be a little opinionated, but I think we could do a fairly good job of carving that out, and then sort of consistently using that both for learning, for documentation, and for tooling purposes to kind of pull people into that pit of success, if you will. But I am speculating a little bit here. It's something that we haven't really doubled down on yet. I just think, personally, I think that is the best way to balance the fact that C# has to stay compatible, but it also has to be free to evolve and embrace the best ways of doing things in the modern world. So that is what we're going to try to do over the next release or two. I think you'll see us doubling down on that.
Okay, great. Well, glad to know the future is modern.
It always is,
isn't it? Okay, so I have a question for Kendra. And it's from our good friend Isaac. What is the roadmap for remote debugging and or testing for containers? I know about bridge to K8s, but curious about remote containers specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac, so much for the question. So I have big dreams for remote testing. So for those of you who don't know, remote testing is the ability of Visual Studio to connect to a remote environment. This includes Linux containers on running locally on your machine or in Azure over an SSH connection. It can also connect to anything over an SSH connection, VMs and all of that stuff. So you can run your tests on a different machine or a different operating system, pipe those test results back into your Visual Studio Test Explorer and debug them and get all of your context with the tools that you love in the operating systems that you're actually deploying to that aren't your local machine. So it's super cool. So super great way to target Linux and do cross-platform testing, or just target any kind of different operating system. So the question is, what's the next thing? What's the future? Is it gonna, because right now it's very bring your own compute. You have to build the container yourself. You have to provision the VM yourself. I'd love to get Azure hooked into this so it can just be like one click, run your tests in Azure. I'm really excited about Azure Container Apps. We released just last month, I think. We announced it. It's in preview right now. It's a lovely, lovely sort of Azure container service that basically uses Kubernetes in the backend and scale and all of this stuff. So I'd love to use a service like that and just hook it into the test explorers. If you're running a bunch of tests, you can scale up, run it all in different containers and get the results back. It'll take the load off of your local machine, and you can be running tests in like an actual deployment environment container or VM that you would use. So your results are going to be maybe more higher fidelity or less flaky or less of a transition in between running tests in your local dev environment and running tests in the cloud. So that's where my mind's at. Nothing is written in stone yet, but we're definitely thinking about the future there.
Oh, great. Good to know. Everything is in the works, Isaac. We're planning on it. Okay, well, we're running a little bit close to the end of time here. This has been an amazing event. One thing I want to do really quickly is if you could all go around one at a time and just say where. So we do tons of community sessions. We do community stand-ups. We do meetup groups. We do tons of stuff where you all can join us and be part of our process and how we develop the products and get your feedback early on in and help build some of these things, because .NET is open source. So really quick, if you have a community stand-up coming up or the dates and times of it, just go ahead and fire off. Maddie.
Yeah, the next community stand-up is the first Thursday of every month of the .NET Maui community stand-up. For .NET Maui. I almost said for Xamarin. It's not what it is. It's for all the things. That's not the next community stand-up. That's the next one you'll see me at. But it's at 1 Eastern time, so 10 Pacific time. So European time is later than that. So,
okay. Great. Thank you. Vincent, you're on mute. Ooh. Everybody's muted. Okay, go.
I was adding to Maddie that that's like 5 or 6 p.m. European time.
Oh, thank you. All right, 5 or 6 European time. Okay. Jeff, I know you have an amazing session that you do every week. Can't hear Jeff. Oh, there we go. I can hear you now. Oh, no. I'm not sure.
We don't know what happened. We can read your lips, though.
Okay.
You said, what happened?
Hey, there we go.
Hey.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Here we go.
This mic just went out on me. Every Monday, and I'm off for the next 2 weeks for holiday, but every Monday you can find me on the Visual Studio channel on Twitch, on YouTube /.net. You can find me teaching at 6 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. Eastern time, and what is that? 1300, 1400 UTC. You can find me teaching all about C# for beginners. We've been going through and taking some of the cool things that Mads and the team have been designing and building and showing off C#10, C#9 features. And we're about to get into an ASP.NET Core series where we're going to get folks started with building your first mobile app. And it's all designed, built for beginners. So there's great interactions, no pressure, no judgment. All chat is welcome during those sessions on Monday mornings.
Amazing. Thank you. What about Mads, Kendra, Daniel, Luis? Do you have community stand-ups?
.NET Community Stand-Up. I believe it's every Tuesday for has ASP.NET content. So I think it's 10 a.m. usually Pacific time. I usually just go to live.net live.net, not confusing at all, live.net, and that has the .NET Community Stand-Up link there, so you can see all the related .NET Community Stand-Up content.
Amazing. Kendra, are you part of that or different one? Same one?
A different one. We have the .NET tooling stand-up where we really dig into the tools. A lot of Roslyn people come on the show to talk about just code fixes, quick fixes, and refactorings, and how we integrate the tools into all of Madd's features, all of the C# language stuff, and tools are a great like kind of learning things. So we've had UX designers on too, and teachers of C# and how we kind of build knowledge into our editors and how we code every day.
Excellent. And Mads, I know you have one as well.
I'm not in a community stand-up. I believe Kathleen is in one regularly, monthly as well. Kathleen Dollard is she's a language PM for all 3 .NET languages. So she goes on there regularly. Occasionally she pulls me in as well, but it's been a little.
And really quick, Luis, are you part of any of the other ones that were already mentioned?
Yes. So I'll plug 2 of them. One is the Machine Learning Community Stand-Up, which happens every other Wednesday. We're looking to get back to those in January, and those happen at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about all things machine learning. We bring on community members. We also do office hours related to machine learning, so make sure to check that out. And we also do the .NET Docs show. So we just bring on community members to talk about all the cool stuff that they're building, share their knowledge, and really have more of a hallway track type of conversation with them. And those happen every Monday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. Your answers were amazing. We appreciate your time. You heard them all. Go and join those stand-ups throughout the week. We have them every week throughout all of time. So please go ahead and join those. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your year and holiday breaks and evenings and seasons and everything that you're enjoying for the rest of the time. I will see you all next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for joining.